Well, at least you're down 2 canines. I mean, that could be worse.
Yeah. I mean, we'll miss him. Like, the house feels a little empty for right now. I'll get over it. One of the dogs in particular is an older dog, and she's adopted the walk and shit technique. And, you know, I was kind of done with the holding 3 dogs and trying to pick up one dog's walk and shit on the street. So I'm not sorry to see the back of that. But they were good dogs.
My dog does that when we go for long walks, and he gets his little digestive system kicks into overdrive. I don't know if your dogs are like this, but mine, anything over about 2 miles, he's just like, and yeah, it's the same deal. It's dribble, dribble, dribble as we go. And I guess the upside of it is in that scenario, it's not like you can pick it up anyways because it's just liquid. Right. It's not. But
yeah, no, this is more like Hansel and Gretel chunks. So, you know, you've got kind of a trail of crumbs. Anyway, we're done with that for now. Sometimes being normal means talking about poop. So here we are. It's true.
This is Normal Men, a podcast from 4 men who are clinging desperately to normalcy in an era when that's asking a bit too much. I'm George in Charlotte.
In D.C., I'm Proctor Malone.
In outer Florida, I'm low-tax speedrun enjoyer.
And I'm Ed in Boston.
How's everybody doing?
I don't love 2026.
Ask me in 3 hours.
Seahawks won. We like that.
Yeah, hey, y'all look good too. Good.
We did.
Unlike everybody else who's winning games in the NFL these days.
Yeah, those were some shit NFL games this week.
I mean, they were entertaining.
Yeah, but that's the thing with the NFL. Like, when they're entertaining, then that means someone's doing something very bad. So
they were entertaining. They were good college games that were being played in the NFL.
Correct. Except for the Seahawks, though, they looked legitimately good.
Except for the Seahawks.
Yeah. Long may it continue.
If we go Niners, Rams, Pats for the championship, that's going to slay a lot of demons. He said.
Yeah.
Invoking all kinds of misfortune. I would say the fan base is terrified.
The only game I really watched much of was the Texans, and who did they play? The Pats. CJ Stroud is terrible, man.
Yep. Yeah, what happened to that dude? I thought he looked pretty good earlier this year despite his total lack of offensive line.
I mean, maybe. I looked up his quarterback rating. It was like 91 or something, which is not terrible. In the modern NFL, it's not anything to write home about.
Looking pretty good despite your terrible offensive line is the Bryce Young experience, and I don't recommend it.
Are you guys in line for a new coach this year? Did you guys fire yours?
I don't think we did. I would hope we didn't, because honestly, like, they turned some real bad pieces into a decent team. Not a good team, of course. Finished below 500,
decent
but decent team. Made the playoffs, so
won the division.
Yeah. It counts,
Lots
man.
to build on.
Same as Duke, who, speaking of which, did y'all see that our quarterback got bought by the Hurricanes?
No, I didn't see that.
Well, in classic Duke fashion, like, the player trading is really where you're doing well as opposed to the on-field performance. I mean, we won the ACC, great, but and Mensa was obviously the critical part of that, but so losing him is going to make us a worse team, but the buyout on his NIL was so big that, we're going to come out better. You know, we've made enough on it that it's gonna work great out. It's gonna work out great for us. So yeah.
See, I mean, this is what we need. We need to formalize the player transfer system in college football. Yeah. We need transfer fees.
It's European soccer in college football. That's what it is.
No, I don't want to do the European soccer thing. It's confusing.
It's happening. So whether you like it or not is not really relevant, my man. That's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, look, no one's happy here. Low tax has to deal with this. I can't see cruise missiles decimate every stadium in the country.
We made it 4 minutes into football chat without Ed having a mental breakdown. So,
yeah, well,
and we haven't even gotten to the hurricanes in Indiana,
which we do need to do. Speaking of which, did y'all see the story about the Indiana coach Chipotle rewards account?
I did not see that story. No. What's going on?
My man eats the same Chipotle bowl for lunch every single day and has, according to the guy that gets the lunch for him, over 60,000 rewards points in the account, which works out to just literally, it's a bowl every day he's at the facility since he was hired. It's enough to get, I think, 40 or 50 free Chipotle burritos or burrito bowls or whatever.
I need to know the bowl to have an opinion on this.
Honestly, I respect it.
That's exotic cuisine in Bloomington, Indiana.
It is. Didn't get into like super detail on the order. I don't know. I'm not sure what the salsa situation was, but we are talking like a burrito bowl with a side of guac here.
Rice, beans, chicken, guac is what I've got. I don't see a salsa mentioned.
There's got to be at least pico, right? If there's no pico in there,
it's the most mild. It is the most mild in existence.
He really is a Staben guy.
Don't they like make you order the corn?
Yeah, like you don't even have to like think of a tomato. You can just get corn.
Although the corn is spicier than the pico. I mean, ostensibly, yeah.
Is it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the pico is the mild, the corn is medium.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought the green was the medium.
There are two mediums.
I see. See, I haven't been into Chipotle in its post-queso era.
Oh, did they get rid of the queso?
No, like I haven't been since they added it. In their desperate attempts to compete with Qdoba, because we have bowl games here. See, I brought it back. Yeah, I mean, like, look, what else are you going to eat there? You're even far enough away from the ocean. You're probably not going to get cruise ship flu.
Oh, in Indiana, you mean, as opposed to at Chipotle? I was like, yeah, you're going to get the burrito, man. Good.
No, like that's part of why I stopped going. Is I learned too much about the place and was like, I'm good. But like in Indiana, what else you got? The sweet release of death?
Pork schnitzel thing. I mean, that we talked about on a previous episode, but
okay, so you want to hasten the sweet release of death?
As always, yes. Yeah.
I mean, if I'm living in Indiana, yes.
Yeah. Or this week. But
yeah, it's been
I haven't been to a Chipotle in like 15 years. Just because, you get they're great at spreading E. coli. My aunt took us to one in Arlington like 20 years ago. She was very excited that they got a Chipotle, and she pronounced it Chipotle.
That is a whole Chipotle or Chipotle are the two that English speakers will sometimes do, and I don't know how that happens. The TL diphthong is just too much for some people, I guess.
They can't read.
That's also
George,
probably, yeah. Read. I'm actually specifically thinking of the person that did this the most in my mind is a guy named Pete, or maybe his brother, but Pete Nigerian, who's this like options trader CNBC personality. And he would talk about, in the heyday of Chipotle, like in the mid 2010s, he would talk about Chipotle options literally every day. And every single time it would be Chipotle, Chipotle, Chipotle. And it drove me bananas. And that's one of the main reasons I don't have CNBC on in the office anymore.
No, for us, it's just that my aunt was extremely white and naive. Despite being like a symbol of the deep state in her career. She once went to a conference in Austria, and she called my mother from it. She was marveling at how everyone in Austria had blonde hair and blue eyes. And my mother sat there and was like, I think there's a reason. You may want to
do some Googling.
I want to brush up on some history here.
Oh
God, that's got to be like a Nahuatl loanword, right? Like Chipotle is. Do we think that's Spanish, or do we think that's indigenous?
It's probably indigenous, adopted to Spanish to the point where it isn't relevant anymore. But let me see.
Proctor got it.
Yeah, there you go. But the Spanish speakers don't have any problems with the TL diphthong, so I don't know what the English speakers are, what our issue is. Well, I know what our issue is. There's a lot of them, but
do you want a list?
As I say to anybody who ever brings something up related to English, it's a dumb language and we shouldn't speak it, but here we are.
All right, so we're cheating. We're cheating here, and people can make fun of us when the show gets released in a few days. Who do you guys got in this game? Right now, it's unwatchable.
I mean, Indiana, obviously, is who I'm rooting for.
Yeah. Anything other than an Indiana victory would be very bad for my state of mental health.
I didn't actually see a line on it, so I don't know how bad an idea this is, but it's hard for me to imagine that Indiana is a big underdog if they're an underdog.
Indiana was favored by 7.5.
Oh, in that case, I feel great about Indiana.
No, we can't have nice things. It's going to be Miami. They thrive in the times of monsters.
It does seem like kind of a jerk move for them to go ahead and buy the next quarterback while they're still playing. Like,
is their quarterback going to go to the league? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's in like his 8th year of college.
Yeah, so that's not. I mean, that's fine.
Oh, it's Carson Beck.
He was at Georgia when I was at Florida State.
How is he only 23? Man, that's amazing.
Is he only 23?
That's what his Wikipedia says.
Yeah, but what does his driver's license say? That's what I want to know. And has anyone checked that? It's Miami. Of course they haven't. All right, we're done with football chat, Ed. You're welcome.
Good.
Until I have this game up on my phone and on the desk. So if something interesting happens, then we may have to come back to it. But I doubt anything interesting is going to happen. Hopefully, Indiana just wins by like 50 points.
Inshallah.
Yeah, so let's do the AI stuff first, in other words.
We could also do a couple minutes on North Carolina if you want.
That's actually pronounced Blorth Carolina.
That poll today is a pretty good hook.
48-24, baby. I mean, it's...
Seahawks over Niners right there.
That's eye-popping.
The polling on Greenland is
But yeah,
pretty wild, too. Did y'all see that one?
yeah, people do not like the idea of invading Greenland.
Weird. I wonder why. Maybe because it's a really, really terrible idea.
Has there been a worse idea in the history of the 21st century?
Yes, nuking a hurricane was a worse idea.
Was that in this century?
Yeah, that was in his first term. He wanted to nuke a hurricane.
Yeah, that was in...
Oh, that's right. That was this.
Yes, 2017, I think.
God, I hate these.
I think that is a worse idea, right? Like, just because the physical impact alone is
because it's using a nuclear weapon.
Right.
It seems like a very bad idea.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Like, nothing good is going to happen.
Right.
Was that the same hurricane where he drew on the map?
Yeah, that's correct.
With the black marker?
Where he drew a map penis.
Back to North Carolina now?
Yes, Blorth Carolina. Let's talk Blorth Carolina.
But another diphthong, another fun consonant L diphthong. Blorth Carolina is the pronunciation. Yeah, Roy Cooper, or Cupper, as it's pronounced where he's from, is going to demolish. What is this jabroni's name again? His name is... What is it? Whatley. Whatley is an RNC guy. He's like a national Republican figure. He's not a North Carolina GOP person. And the reason this jabroni is being held up to be decimated by Roy is because Laura Trump wanted to run, and everyone in the North Carolina GOP was like, yeah, sure, because you're going to get wrecked. And then she was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get wrecked. And who's going to go then? Because statewide in the state, if you're like national, like a hardline Republican in this state, you can still win like state auditor or treasurer or whatever if you're just like a normal Republican, like just a random Republican. But if you're a national figure in any way, you're getting nuked in this election cycle. And yeah, this poll. So Proctor, walk us through this poll.
Yeah, so this is a TIPP, and they were just in the field a couple days ago, and the poll they dropped has Roy Cupper at 48 and Michael Whatley, am I getting the first name right? Michael Whatley at the princely number of 24 with 27% fully undecided. The results aren't going to be that good, but like that's an insane top line. And there was nothing good under the hood either. There were still 22% of self-declared Harris voters that Roy hadn't consolidated yet. And he's already, up 48-24. It's gonna pencil out to being probably a 15 to 20 point win if that poll's accurate.
I can't imagine why someone wouldn't want to vote for a guy who looks like a thumb, whose entire history on Ballotpedia is he did a layoff at the RNC.
I mean, Cupper's going to win comfortably. Whatley's boring. They need to bring back the horny black Nazi guy.
The horny black Nazi who lost by 15 points to my boy Josh Stein.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Mark Robinson,
Yes.
aka Mini Solder on certain Nazi-adjacent porn websites.
Look, is losing by 15 more or less than losing by 24.
Well, the thing is that gubernatorial result was the biggest margin of victory in like 40 years. So yeah, it was a big deal. Look.
No, I know, but now we're in hold my beer territory.
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the Senate results. I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, if Roy is able to win by 20, and I think that is possible. I'd say it's unlikely, but it's possible. Look, anything over 10 in North Carolina is an absolute blowout, like for either party, right? It's just, that is disaster levels of margin. And right. I think the TIP poll does a really good job of establishing this, right? Like North Carolina, it's a southern state, but it has a history of moderation. I know people are going to roll their eyes at that, but it's just true, right? Like this is a 50-50 state and has been for a long time. And it's been gerrymandered to hell, and the state Supreme Court has been really aggressive in protecting that gerrymander and pushing Republican policies. So we are much more conservative in our government than our electorate. And our electorate is very, very independent heavy. There are more registered independents than Dems or Republicans. And that's continuing in terms of new registrations and has historically been a thing too. There's also been a thing where a lot of people who were part of the New Deal coalition, like rural non-college whites basically, were registered Democrats and voted Republican, and that sort of attrited away over time as people age through and re-register and all that stuff. So it doesn't surprise me at all that 25% of the electorate is saying, I don't know, at this stage, because that's how a lot of North Carolina voters tend to think, and a lot more than other states anyways. And this far out, and with a very, there's going to be no October surprise from Roy. He was a 2-term governor. Everyone liked him. He had high approvals all the way through. He won re-elections in 2016 and 2020. This is not going to be a race where there's something coming out of left field, and he will consolidate a huge percentage of that remaining electorate because those people they don't like Trump. They just don't, right? The Republican base in this state is way weaker than it looks. And the question will be, how does that reflect in the state Supreme Court race? Look, if the senator's winning by 10 to 15 points, Dems are winning the next Supreme Court race. We've talked in the past on this podcast about what that means, and so on and so forth. The interesting thing is what's the read through to other swing states. And I'm not going to venture a huge guess there because I think this race, North Carolina is trending bluer faster than almost anywhere else in the country. And you've got a very high name recognition, well-liked candidate on the Dem side and a nobody on the Republican side, and all the thermostatic public opinion stuff going. So it's hard to unpack how much of that is state specific versus the national environment, but it's not good for a Republican Senate candidate anywhere.
Yeah, they're going to triage this one too. I mean, I think that Republicans are going to pull money out of this. It's going to be the first race they stop spending on. And so I think we're going to get big margins out of this. And like George said, that has positive effects for the state Supreme Court, which is a really big deal because North Carolina is currently gerrymandered to hell. And the best avenue for breaking that is to flip the court. It's the Wisconsin plan, that you have a state constitution that with a different Supreme Court would be interpreted to prevent political gerrymandering, or potentially to prevent gerrymandering for some of the other reasons that you might be able to hang on the extreme gerrymander they've done at both state and federal offices. And we're pretty close, if memory serves, right? Is this the election we could potentially take it?
No, we need to run the table over this election and into 2028, but really good odds that happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was going to be 2028.
Yeah. This is either 2 or 3 seats this year, I think. And then 2028 is 2.
I think it's 2, and then we need 1 more after that.
We talked about this in one of our first public release episodes. So I can go spelunking in our show notes from last February. But it's a big deal for that reason. The coattails matter, and I don't think there's much of anything else on the ballot because again, it's gerrymandered to hell. So the House races are not competitive. I think across the board, they're not competitive. And I don't know if there's any other significant statewides. I would think probably not.
Yeah, it's not 2 this cycle. It's just the 1 this cycle, and then it's 3 up in 2028. So this cycle, we've got Anita earls up, that doesn't change the balance of power. But then if we sweep the 3 in 2028, Paul Newby is the Chief Justice. He's up. Phil Berger, another terrible, terrible man, is up. And then Tamara Berenger is up as well. So we need to defend the existing seat in 2026 and then sweep the 2028 3 to win back state Supreme Court control. That, I mean, look, if Cooper wins by 10 points, it's you get good odds doing that, because North Carolina is not going to go more red over time. It's trending blue. So,
well, fingers crossed. In terms of what that would mean for House control, we're talking what? It's like 5 seats of gerrymander that we can knock out of that.
I think the net is 5. Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on what the state Supreme Court does. It depends who those specific personalities are. There are variables there, but even just look in fair maps, right? The North Carolina General Assembly is at best 50-50 and probably more like 60-40 in a wave year for Dems. And you would see congressional districts that, again, it depends how they require the maps to be drawn, but it would be a much better outcome than the current one. So
we talked about the Georgia pathway and the Virginia pathway here. Like, you look at Virginia right now, Dems have not just a trifecta, but a real trifecta for the first time in generations, if not ever, in Virginia, because this is the first trifecta where it's on state maps that are fair. That previously there was a Republican gerrymander at the state level also that was being broken, so Democratic majorities were very small. And this is the first election that Dems have fully broken through that on relatively fair maps. And of course, Dems are now going to gerrymander it to hell and gone the other way at the federal level. That it looks like,
as our girl there has made clear,
God, she rules.
L. Louise Lucas, the Senate president in Virginia.
I just love that she called Warner and what's his name cucked.
Tim Kaine, yeah. And she, look, no lies detected.
There's a lot of different positions on this team, And I'm glad that she's out there pushing for the 10-1 split. It looks like we're going to get it in Virginia.
We get maps on that this week, right?
Yeah, I think so. It still has a couple phases to go through for approval. I think it has to go back to the voters.
Yeah, it does. But it'll pass. I mean, it's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, this is the same magnitude swing of California getting its stuff together. This is a big deal. This is nationally tilting stuff that's happening there. And it's very easy to see a scenario where that happens in Wisconsin in future, and eventually perhaps in North Carolina, in Blorth Carolina.
Yeah. Thank you. Put some respect on our name.
Even though this is kind of small ball state politics, it has eventual ramifications at the national level, even if you don't care about what happens in North Carolina, which you should. It's a lovely state.
Yeah, we like it down here. So, in worse news this week, we obviously need to talk about what's going on in Minnesota with the occupation by ICE there. I do think occupation is the right way to describe it. Maybe not severe enough, but I think at a minimum, that's the only way to describe it. Everyone's favorite poster, Will Stansel, has had some interesting descriptions of what is going on up there, and he is also very much putting in the work, which we respect and appreciate.
That but unironically.
The MO is to look for someone who visibly looks like they could hypothetically be from another country, regardless of legal status, swarm them with a dozen plus agents, throw them in a vehicle, and disappear. They look for people who are alone. They look for people who cannot, let alone defend themselves, can't even give a sign to somebody of who they are or that they're being taken.
This is gang activity.
It is absolutely gang activity. And the response to gang activity is a bigger gang. And that's going to happen at some point. And I don't know how Minnesotans have remained as restrained as they are up to this point. But it's very clear that the only thing that's going to protect you is the threat of physical violence. Or just staying off the street. And at some point, someone will do this. However uninvisable it is.
It's weirder, though. Because they are dissuading a lot of people by just being right up in their face constantly, right? There is a reason there are 200 whistles being printed on my printers downstairs right now, and it's because they're getting shipped out there tomorrow morning, right? Just making a hell of a lot of noise is scaring them off in ways that I kind of, setting aside that these people are monsters and we will need to pack the courts full of them in dockets. But, like, they're just scared to do anything if anyone can see them. Their moral fortitude is lacking, among other things, right? Like, I don't think you have to shoot them. They just stand there and pee down their legs.
I mean,
I think morale is becoming a problem for them.
It's 3 degrees in Minneapolis tonight, it's worth saying. So if they're operating tonight, I hope you boys are as cold as it is humanly possible to be, and I hope you lose every single digit to frostbite, and I hope worse for you. Yeah,
I was going to say, they don't seem to stand around all the time. Sometimes they're slipping on the ice and falling and busting their asses.
The scale is really important to understand, though. Minneapolis has a significantly larger police presence than my metro does, and just in terms of head count, right? Which isn't to say it's a heavily policed metro, but I mean, they've got, give or take, 2,800, 2,900 officers in the various police departments around the metro area. There are more ICE agents than that in the city right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, I think like the sense of scale here is just unreal. And yes, morale is a problem. We know they are not going to stay in Minneapolis indefinitely. We know that's not going to be the thing. They're going to move on to some other target. Ducking has worked well, I think, in Chicago and Charlotte. New Orleans, I'm not as sure. Cause it's a little different situation, but my impression is that eventually the Eye of Sauron moves on and then you go back to normal. That has been the experience in Charlotte for sure. The longer this continues, the more likely we get to a more kinetic outcome. And I do think under an indefinite, if they are going to keep 3,000 ICE officers on the streets of Minneapolis for, let's say, a year, just as like a random hypothetical. Again, I don't think this is what they're going to do, but hypothetically, if they did, people are going to take violent solutions to that. I am deeply convinced of that. And
probably.
Yeah.
But they're not going to stay that long. So like
they've been there for what, 6 weeks at this point?
Something like that? A little less, maybe?
Aren't they getting ready to move on to Philly?
That's the rumor.
Have fun with that, guys.
For a bunch of places.
Yeah. One of the kind of cool things that, you know, we joked about this online, but one of the cool things that we've seen evolve is that sort of different urban areas have kind of pushed back against this occupation in ways consistent with the soul of the city, right? Like Portland got real fucking weird.
Charlotte had a bunch of
it's going to be one guy.
Zoomers.
There's going to be one guy in Philadelphia who eats a big thing of horse shit just staring at the ICE officers.
But I mean, like I think we've seen that continue. The soul of the Twin Cities is very earnest and very righteous, and that's kind of the way that they've approached this. There is just genuine have you no decency outrage from the good people of St. Paul and Minneapolis against this, and it's been cool to see that progress. Well, Philly's got its own brand, as Hotak said.
I don't know how they're going to feed themselves inside the Philly metro. Like, I don't know how they're going to be able to walk into a restaurant without getting immediately inundated with literal feces in the food. You can eat in small town Minnesota and not have them pull that and then go arrest the cooks that made your dinner a couple hours later, which shout out to Patrick Wyman for pointing this out, by the way. That behavior in the ancient world, which Patrick is something of an expert on, would get you absolutely wrecked by every single person you interacted with the rest of your life. Like violating hospitality
and
like that.
And the supernatural.
Yeah. The gods were angry back then, much angrier than today, believe it or not. The depravity of that move where someone cooks you food and welcomes you into their establishment and then you detain them and commit violence against them, essentially, is just...
These are some old laws that are getting broken.
Yeah.
Older than this country, older than Europeans on this continent.
Very old is like an understatement here, honestly. So Proto-Indo-European, which is the language family that English and basically everything in Europe, not everything, but most of European languages, Sanskrit, just this crazy array of languages comes from. The word for guest and host was the same because this was a nomadic pastoral culture. Imagine island hopping in Polynesia, but instead of island hopping, you are moving across the steppes in wagons and sort of feeding your foraging for your hooved animals along the way, and you're on horseback and you're moving, and we're talking thousands of miles, right? You're going from Ukraine to China, essentially, is the environment we're talking about here. Just massive. So guest and host were the same word. That language is roughly 5,000 years old. And if you had tried to pull what they just pulled no, would not go well for you. So they're messing with some very old stuff there.
Well, I hope the weather gets them in Minneapolis, and hopefully somebody up the chain is going to rethink things here. They're
not. Sorry,
classic Ed Proctor moment.
You're probably right.
I mean, I'm more worried about these pissants. I mean, like, Minneapolis is too big for them. How do they think they're going to deal with Philly? That's why they're going to go pick on a shitty 40,000 person town in Maine, right? Like, and I take that personally.
Are there any towns in Maine that have 40,000 people?
Several.
In the winter, though?
The town I grew up in had like 2,000 people in the winter. 5 times that in the summer. So you're not wrong. But no, like Lewiston has like 40,000 people, and I think like 5,000 Somalis living there. And like, yeah, that seems like more their speed. And it's just like, you think after Will Stansel has clowned you, you can go to Philly? How can you show your face?
These people literally swim in dumpsters for fun, and you're going to try and impose like an occupation on them? Is this like Michael Caine
George
from
is
Batman?
out here talking about kinetic solutions, but like he didn't say it was batteries.
Like Morgan Freeman from Batman. Like, your plan is to do this? Like, your plan is to blackmail this man? Good luck. Hope you like feces in your cheesesteak, fella.
Yeah, pork on the menu at Gino's.
Wait, is Gino? Which one is the racist one? Gino's, or what's the other one called?
Is it not both? Pat's is the other one.
Pat's. That's right. They are probably both the racist one.
Like, I don't know. Maybe this is just in my head, but I've always appreciated Philly as a city that is provincial first and racist second. It's not that they're not racist; they're extremely racist. But like, Philly pride sits at a level over the racism.
They did have the best founding father, though. In fairness, they did have Ben Franklin.
Absolutely.
No, they had the scariest.
I mean, only if you're a doctor that treats venereal disease.
Or a kite.
So we talked a little about AI a few weeks ago, and about adventures in Claude Code, which at this point I think we've gotten kind of general penetration that this is, if not a step change, at least kind of a state change in where things are in terms of using AI to build things.
Let's hold on. Before we talk about step versus phase versus superlative, let's walk through the difference between, I think a lot of people, when they hear AI, the first thing they're going to think of is like ChatGPT, an LLM that's a web interface or an app where you're typing in a question or something, and it's spitting back text to you and whatever. Obviously, I think most people listen to that podcast and this podcast know that that's not the extent of AI when people say AI. But let's describe how Claude Code is different from, for instance, Claude, which is Anthropic's product. Anthropic is the company that runs Claude and Claude Code. Claude you can think of as ChatGPT. I mean, they're not the same, obviously, but in terms of how they appear on the screen, etc., that's the analog here. How is Claude Code different? What is Claude Code as opposed to just Claude?
Okay, so yeah, there's two important things here. One is that models are not the application, and the application is not the model. ChatGPT is an application sitting on top of several different models from OpenAI that we don't give money to. ChatGPT, or in this case, Claude.ai, I might call it Claude Web or Claude Desktop, because they're all kind of the same. There's some interesting things on that, but that's another show. The model doesn't really do very much by itself, right? Like, you send in a message and it gives you back something derived from its training set. This can be kind of interesting, but as everyone has found out by trying to ask the early ones, like ChatGPT, when it was like GPT 3.5, it doesn't know anything and it gets everything wrong. the interesting thing is that you can start, one, giving it more information, and two, having it find information itself. And this is where the application comes into play, where you start exposing things called tools. And this is why if you ask a question in ChatGPT or Claude.ai, it'll go say searching the web or something like that. And these tools are exposed by the application. They're not part of the model. They're not related to it. There's a little bit of overlap because they also sell a platform, but you can consider it as being part of the application. The fact that you can do a web search is a capability afforded by an application. I can go take the Claude model and plug it into something else and use it in a different way, which Anthropic happens to, do. And it's called Claude Code. Instead of having this sit in a web browser, it runs in a process on your computer. Most people run it inside of a terminal. There are other ways to do it, such as if you use a text editor, a suitably nerdy one, you can run Claude Code inside of it as a side panel or something like that, and you get some integrations in. So when it's editing a file, it can bring the file up and you can look at it and stuff like that. But the important things are that Claude Code, while it is an application, is really more of a toolkit for building stuff into it. And the fact that it has the ability of somebody like Proctor, sorry, that sounded pejorative,
Nope, that's okay.
I wasn't really apologizing, don't worry. But the fact that it emits code that turns into a browser plugin, like a browser extension, is kind of secondary to the fact that you can take Claude Code and you can start upgrading it. You can start putting new stuff in it. You can much more easily provide high resolution and detailed information into the thing in the form of, we call them skills. But you can describe, I want you to write code, but I want you to write code this way. I want you to follow these steps. I want you to use this workflow to engage with a completely separate instance of Claude that does code review for you. And while you can do some parts of this in Claude Web, functionally Claude Web is it's a website, right? You kind of get what they give you. They have some connectors in it that are with their partners, right? I use Notion. I can plug Notion in as it's like my notepad.
But phrased differently, right? Like when I use Claude to write Python code, I am writing really simple stuff that I'm just running on my desktop. It's not going it might go scrape a website. That's kind of the extent of the integration it would have with other tools. So when I'm doing that, you can just use Claude. You don't need Claude Code. I'm not saying it's better to use Claude. I'm just saying you don't need to go up to the Claude Code step because it's relatively self-contained and sort of just getting the code, saying, I don't know if you let's try doing this instead. Okay, running it. Got an error. Okay, let's troubleshoot this error. That works fine for that kind of limited type of thing. If you're maybe building a spreadsheet, the look on Ed's face right now is hilarious.
I disagree entirely. Sorry, because this is an important thing. You are now doing the thing the robot can
Yes,
do.
I know, but I'm also getting it for free, and I don't spend a huge amount of time doing this, and so I can dip my toe in and do the thing I need to do without using Claude Code. But if I was doing anything more complicated at all, and maybe even for this instance, then you should be using Claude Code. I'm not saying don't use Claude Code. I'm just saying, depending on what you're doing, you may be able to get a good enough version out of the website, out of Claude, but Claude Code is a massive force multiplier.
See, the thing is, I'm saying you shouldn't use Claude Web for pretty much anything.
Yeah, but you also do this stuff for a living, and I don't. So, for someone lower on the learning
independently
curve,
of that, though, no, but independently of that, all right, he's throwing a flag.
I'm the guy who's lower on the learning curve here, and at some point you should spin up Claude Code and see what it does for you here. The difference from my perspective, and Ed can jump in here and correct me, which I'm sure he will.
Oh, thank you.
But the difference from my perspective is that what Claude is doing, the main thing that Claude Code is doing differently than Claude Code is writing bash scripts constantly to execute things from the command line on my machine. So rather than me going to Claude and saying, hey, give me a script that does XYZ, which is what you would do through Claude Web, and then you would take that script and you would plug it into wherever you're plugging in the script. It is saying, okay, well, let me pull your directory and see what files you have that are relevant to this, and then I'm going to go look at these files on your computer, and then I'm going to go rearrange these files that are on your computer, and that's going to be part of what I'm looking at and also part of my output. And the thing is that when you iterate that, one of the things that it's doing is it's writing to the files on your computer, right? So that means that it is storing things for future versions of itself in essentially markdown files on your computer. And it is doing so in a way that takes very, very little effort from you. There's no going back and forth for me. There's no, I'm not the shuttle in this loom, right? Like I'm not going back and forth to take output from Claude and pump it into Claude. Claude's doing that itself. So when I say, okay, walk me through this and make me a widget that does X, it's making me a widget that does X, but also it's writing down markdown instructions for this is what this widget that I just made does, so that the next time I come along and I spin up Claude Code, it's looking at that markdown file and saying, okay, well, I've got this widget that does X. How can that widget be relevant to the next task I'm being asked to do?
Yeah, and like there's two things here. One is like memory management, and like some people call it context engineering, and I want to shove them in a locker. And you're in a bit of a weird spot because Propter has been building a browser extension to ruin and or save Blue Sky, depending on where you're sitting. But most code has a definition of done, right? Like most code, and like this is why I say that most people probably shouldn't be using Claude Web for most things. And I don't just mean code, but we'll get back to that in a second. It's that by having it write like a Python script, it will generally, you might have to nudge it a little bit, but it'll generally write tests against this. So it makes sure that the script that it wrote does what you think it does, right? Like it comes up with input and output and just runs it. If it fails to do the expected thing, it goes and fixes it and runs it again, right? Like this is that agentic loop that everyone talks about, is you have a definition of done and you keep pushing at it until it succeeds. The second thing, though, is that Claude Code is not about writing code. I mean, you can write code because it has the ability to write things to a file, and it has the ability to write and run a shell script or something like that. But the reason I say that most people probably shouldn't use Claude Web is because, like, you don't have to use Claude Web for anything at that point, right? Like, take, for example, we use Dropbox to share files back and forth for this podcast. We use it for the recordings and stuff like that. I also have a Dropbox that is on every one of my computers that Claude Code just lives inside of. And it's like my daily notes. It is my to-do lists. It is references to other projects where I'm using Claude, a bunch of other stuff. And everything lives in there, right? And that means it works the way that I want it to work. And it also means that it is, generally speaking, it is not entirely unintermediated, right? Like Anthropic is still doing a bunch of stuff, but everything they don't like, you can remove, with a couple of exceptions around like safety and stuff, right? Like if you think their web search sucks, you can tell it to do it more times. Whereas Claude Web will just kick you out. Like if you know something can be found, you can provide higher resolution instructions on like, I know what's over here. I know we need this. This is what a lot of the tools that I recently published on GitHub do, is they align on like, these are the things that are important for you to search. Like this is official documentation. This is Reddit. Reddit is less important than official documentation. And you have the ability to really customize all this stuff. The initial reaction a lot of people have is, I don't need to do that. And that's where I kind of laugh and say, you will. But also like this allows you to control a lot more of your ecosystem, right? It allows you to control a lot more of your stuff. And as we do more and more stuff with computers, letting other people control that for you is hard. I could replace Claude, like Anthropic, tomorrow. I am not tied to them except that they have the best tool right now. And that's true for pretty much everything I do on like a computing basis. And one of the exciting things about all these tools to me is that it will not be that hard to ask whatever comes after Claude Code to port all of the stuff that I have for Claude Code to it, right? Like there's a lot more opportunities for us to control our stuff again in ways that I find pretty exciting. And getting away from the web is kind of the first step.
The fact that all of this is happening through ultimately the medium of basically English language text, with a few exceptions, like sometimes this is getting structured through a JSON file or in some other way that's easier for the machine to read.
You want to absolutely lose your mind? Go figure out how images work.
But basically this is happening through text files that you can look at, because that's what the machine is looking at. It's not looking at things that are in bizarre proprietary formats. Like I mentioned Markdown earlier, but like you, a human who has no particular background in this except for you understand English, can read a Markdown file. Like it will be legible to you if you open it up. And that's how the machine is talking to itself. That's how the machines are talking to each other here, through the medium of text. And, in my case, our case, English language text. I'm not somebody who has a deep coding background. I've done a little bit of work from the command line in the context of statistical analysis before. But, I grew up using a Mac, and by the time I switched to Windows, the command line was not part of the consumer user experience. I've never taken a programming class, again, with the exception of some statistical analysis stuff that isn't really relevant to what I'm doing here. And this has not been a high barrier to access for me to walk in and start using Claude Code in a way that I would say is definitely sub-professional, but is unambiguously powerful. There are things that I can do here that I can think back to various points at jobs I've had where being able to do this would have been a huge value add for me at that job. Just being able to make a widget or to point this at something and say, okay, this is how I want you to parse data from these unstructured files, or to say, okay, well, we have a bunch of files of these various types. This is how I want you to handle them. Or even just, okay, we've got this web interface that is a gigantic pain in the ass, but we have to deal with it for whatever reason. This is how I want you to interact with that web interface. Being able to do that kind of custom work at very, very low friction is super valuable.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this is something that can be valuable to almost anybody. This is stuff that is powerful if you have an idea of something that you think is doable and you think you might want to do better. I think people are hesitant to believe this because it sounds like it's hidden behind Claude Code, and we're throwing around scary words like command line interfaces and JSON and Markdown and all of this stuff that is kind of a jargon check to get into programmer world. All of this stuff is accessible to you if you know how to operate a Windows machine and you have a reasonable facility with the English language. You can already do it. It's already there. The tools are there.
Because you play up that you're not a programmer, but also I am 0.0% surprised that you have had pretty rapid success with it, because you went to law school. That's literally the thing. Everyone I know who is good at this is either some specific kinds of weird programmers who went outside at some point, or are lawyers, or one really weird seminarian guy. But it is all about just knowing how to think about stuff. And I don't mean think about a computer. I mean think about stuff, right? The ability to work at an abstracted layer, and at your choosing to sort of open the box and look at what's inside of it. You don't have to most of the time, because most of this stuff is pretty easy. There are a lot of browser extensions out there. There's a lot for it to think through, and it is able to lift up that abstraction layer to a question where you can to a layer where it can ask you questions, which is a really underrated thing that these things do now.
Yeah,
is they ask clarifying questions around what do you actually want? The whole hallucinations concept people run into, and it's very frustrating, but it is usually an indication that you kind of didn't give it as many details as you needed to. These days, they're better at going, there's a gap, I'm going to ask one of these clarifying questions. And because it can work at that layer, you can work really, really fast and get exactly what you want. I have a window open on my other monitor that is currently dealing with orchestrating a bunch of different virtual machines to do some stuff. And it's getting really annoyed and really mad because this is hard, right? There isn't something off the rack that it can do this with, but I've explained it probably well enough. We'll find out afterwards. And it's a sliding scale. But the biggest thing is that for the stuff that prompted that you were touching on, the thing, if you don't know what Markdown is, ask the robot. It will tell you. and it will give you examples, and it will do a pretty good job. And that's one of the things that I kind of find really frustrating about all of the online discourse around this stuff, because some of the people who are most likely to be most effective with this stuff have kind of shot themselves in the head, right? Like they've gone, this is all wrong, this is all bad, and meanwhile they're most likely the people who are very likely to be good at this stuff. And sure, there are absolutely moral concerns. I don't, when I'm saying I don't give money to OpenAI, that's not a joke. But like, these are a preview of what is going to be running on your phone in 5 years, and we're going to have a substantial amount of that trickling down to devices that you directly control over time. You know, I have the spot in my basement picked out for praying for the AI bubble so I can put an entire rack in my basement, so I don't have to pay them for it. Like, this stuff's just going to show up, and there's a ton of leverage whether or not you want to deal with the inference providers long term, right? Like, I don't want to put it as like a necessary thing, because I don't know, and that would be a little overconfident, but I'm betting that way.
Yeah, this is not really meant to be a long-term prediction segment, but I would be surprised if there are not local models that can do pretty much what you want to do within a couple of years. They're not necessarily going to be the same as the frontier models, but this is a situation where good enough to be useful is moving very quickly. And it's going to be behind the frontier.
If you got $5,000, you can run a very, very competitive thing right now.
Yeah, probably in 2 years, it's going to be, you can run a competitive thing on a Mac Mini.
It depends on that, because we're out of VRAM. Thank you, South Korea. Once that shakes out, I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff. Yeah.
I guess what I want to say to kind of encapsulate this, or at least to take a shot at it, is if you can think of something that you're pretty sure should exist. Like, if you can think of a widget, you know, if only I had a program that could do this thing, and you're pretty sure that that's a widget that could exist or should exist, you know, surely somebody wrote that at some point, then it doesn't matter whether or not somebody wrote it, because now you can write it, and you can write it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for, you know, these things that kind of fill in the gaps of open source software or whatever, everything that is in that possibility space is now actualizable. And it's actualizable by you on demand. And that's a big deal. I think we're going to be seeing the effects of that for a while.
I have written 0 lines of code in the blog that I publish. And it is like all custom and pretty much the exact way I want it.
Anyway.
It's weird. It's going to get weirder.
We'll stop talking at George and Lotax about this, but seriously, if you guys haven't spun it up, it's worth hell. I'll shoot you some invite codes. But you should try this to see what we're talking about, because I think the experiential part of it is significant.
For the record, I have been trying to install Claude Code install Claude locally while they've been talking, and I am running into path variable issues, and Windows is a dumb operating system and we shouldn't use it.
This is true.
For the record, I also had a pain in the ass problem with that. What I did was I installed VS Code, I installed Claude Code as an extension for VS Code, and then I just let it install other packages as it wanted to install them.
That's a good way. It gets you out of most of the problem.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the best way, but I tried screwing around with it a couple other ways, and that's the way that worked for me. Again, as somebody who has essentially no command line background.
For the record, unlike these three, I have been being normal and watching the Miami-Indiana National Championship game.
I have it on in the background.
It is 10-0, and the Miami Hurricanes are averaging a whopping 2 yards per play.
You have been watching a game that is just sapping the life out of you, and Proctor has been expanding his horizon. So really, who wins?
No, under 2 yards of play for Miami, alhamdulillah. Like, no, the best.
No, this is giving me life. I could watch.
Yeah, no, this is good.
If I could watch Miami get just flayed with broken glass all day, I would 100% watch it.
Are we getting Marco Rubio sideline reaction shots?
Is he at the game?
Oh, I don't know. I bet you Marco is there.
Although Miami did just hit one down the seam, so maybe we should stop talking like this in case they might score, in case they score or something.
Although Marco's I think he went to Miami Law, but I think he did his undergrad with the Lizards.
I mean, surely he's not an Indiana fan, right?
No, I don't think so.
Not with Mike Pence there.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the whole podcast, but I'll root for Mike Pence over Marco Rubio right now.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong.
Wait, is Mike Pence really there?
I don't know if they let him go out in public anymore.
So we talked earlier about a frozen 2-degree tundra that the Trump administration had set its rapacious eyes on, and we actually have a second such location to talk about tonight, which is not going to surprise anyone that's been paying attention to the news over the MLK weekend.
I'm going to read from the Finn Twitter account, which is quoting the Norwegian Prime Minister, whose name I am not even going to pretend I can pronounce because it's got that O with the line through it that's not really a letter. The Norwegian PM said, "I have repeatedly, clearly explained to Trump that it is an independent committee that awards the Nobel Peace Prize."
There is a direct text message conversation to this effect.
So that's where we are now. We're threatening to invade Denmark because of Norway having an independent body that gives a shiny medal to Obama and not to Trump.
Just to be clear, the Nobel Committee it has nothing to do with the Norwegian government at all. It's completely it's its own thing.
Yeah,
completely independent.
Yes, and Trump apparently sent him a message, him or her, I have no idea, saying, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace."
He thought that was so cool.
Yeah, the Europeans didn't.
You know, he'd like nodded to himself. Transatlanticism is on the ropes, fellows.
The Norwegian government did not give me the prize that they are not empowered to give me, and therefore we shall invade Denmark.
This is so stupid.
It's so stupid.
It's real dumb. It's so dumb Reddit conservatives are I mean, they're revolting anyway, but you know what I mean.
Like Denmark, by the way, is doing big boy response things. They've sent the commandant of the Denmark army is now on site in Greenland, and I imagine is very happy about that. Because once again, Greenland sucks, man. Like Greenland in January cannot be a pleasant experience for anyone. But you've got what is for Denmark a significant military presence there. You know, they're not a huge military, but these are, you know, tier S troops, right? Like these guys are a NATO ally. This is presumably they're not just sending sticks and stems here. This is the good people. It's a tripwire force, but it's a tripwire force that if we trip the wire, they're probably going to take some foreskin to Jesus here.
I'm sorry, what?
This feels like a situation that could very easily spiral all the way out of control.
Yeah.
If the American perspective is that the euros are going to fold and then the euros don't fold and we keep pushing because eventually they must fold, right?
It's not just the euros. Canada is also considering sending troops to Greenland to be part of the tripwire force. So it's not just the euros. And by the way,
it's not just the euros.
Longest undefended border in the world. Also our biggest trading partner. Look, if they actually do this, the United States has the military capability to seize Greenland. The Trump administration does not have the political tools to maintain that occupation for more than a couple days. Straightforwardly, they can't. They are bluffing in the purest sense of the term. There is nothing there. Because if they do this and they shut down transatlantic trade, because we would then in effect we would have invaded Denmark, we would have invaded a NATO signatory, so a bunch of different stuff kicks off immediately. You've got problems with Canada, you've got problems with the UK, France, Germany. Those are just the big economies. there are all sorts of avenues in the financial markets. There are all sorts of avenues in terms of sanctions. There are all sorts of avenues in terms of trade, where the value chains that underpin our modern society stop. They stop. You don't get to go to Europe to spend your summer vacation. Your assets could be seized because you're an American with assets that are inside European territory. If you're an American company operating in those territories, maybe you're not operating there anymore. Maybe your assets are seized. Elon Musk, we're looking at you first, buddy. Germany could be running its own auto factory outside of Berlin in short order. Or I cannot overstate how devastating the consequences for this would be in terms of the economy, in terms of just the basic availability of stuff you use every day. In 2021 and 2022, we had a very unusual situation where global logistics just basically broke down because there was so much stuff trying to move through the system. Everything crashed and then everything ramped right back up, and that just broke the system. This would be way worse. It would be way, way, way worse. Do you really think that every Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Volkswagen dealer in the country is just going to go, if their entire business is zeroed out overnight? Because that's what's happening. That's what we're talking about here.
I'm just imagining them selling all of Trump's golf courses over there in like St. Andrews and Ireland and stuff, and then the Europeans having a big debate about whether they can use the money for Ukraine or something.
I mean, it is all of this. I am not saying none of this is going to happen. What I'm saying is that the United States cannot seize Greenland and hold it because the political underpinnings of the Trump administration are far too weak to even consider accepting the consequences of doing that. They know this. I mean, they definitely know this, and they just think that they're going to be able to talk big and Europe will eventually back down. And
I am going to give a grandiose bit of Kremlinology.
Sure, please. You know what? I really appreciate this. Can I just quickly, before you do this, Ed, I really appreciate this because I was spiraling there for a second, and you're going to get my mind off it. So yes, do this.
Yes, I am, because you're saying they don't have the ability to do this externally, and I don't think they have the ability to do this internally.
I'm saying they don't have the ability to.
No, I mean they don't have the ability to get it out of the White House.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I genuinely don't, because like this is what Trump does when somebody tells him no. And we have seen reporting, I forget where it was, I saw it in the, I apologize, Daily Mail, but it had been reported elsewhere ahead of time. Like the Joint Chiefs have basically said no. Right? And like, what's he going to do? Is he going to waddle down to who could he even talk to? Is he going to find one of his favorite MAGA colonels and like brevet them to general? Like
infantry dort, buddy? What are these? One-man invasion. Nuke. If you know who infantry dort is, I'm not going to explain it. If you don't, you're better off. Yeah,
you don't want to. All you need to know is we hope he swims. But yeah, like this is a child acting out, right? And I think they literally have not let it get out of their house, except they can't take away Grandpa's Twitter account.
Yeah, I think he announced those tariffs as just this show of rage and impotence.
They will get overturned.
Yeah, and it'll eventually just peter out. I do like the idea that Trump trying to appoint all of these like MAGA generals and eventually getting cooed, and then somehow we wind up with Mike Black on Blue Sky cheering for Strategy Cheese.
Dude, Strategy Cheese must be just hating his life more than anyone else on the planet right now.
He's going to go get a nice sinecure to get paid for the rest of his life.
Strategy Cheese is Elbridge Colby, who is I believe we've talked about on this podcast before, who is currently an Undersecretary of Defense, I think, maybe Undersecretary of War.
Undersecretary of ill repute.
He's the China Hawk's China Hawk. His whole thing is like great power competition with China. And oh boy, is he having a bad year.
I hope he has a worse one.
Yes, he's been advocating that we stop arming Ukraine so that we can focus on China and Taiwan. I'm sure he thinks this Greenland thing is just the smartest play in the world on those grounds.
Also notable on this Canada last week signed a trade agreement with China that opened the door to Chinese exports of vehicles to Canada. Canada had previously basically towed the American line on heavy tariffs against Chinese vehicles. And this is a quota system. They're not going to be importing 1 million vehicles a year. It's managed. It's not enormous, but it is a foot in the door inside the North American auto market. In addition to the large footprint that Chinese OEMs have inside Mexico already. Yeah, the Mexican auto market doesn't really do a lot of northbound stuff. Like, you're not going to sell a used Mexican car north of the border. Typically, it usually goes the other way around. Like, we export a lot of used autos to Mexico. Canada has essentially the same auto market we do. I mean, it functions almost identically. It's very similar in terms of the models available. It's a lot of, we build vehicles for each other on either side of the border quite a lot. And yeah, that's a big deal. So if your thing is to be afraid of the Chinese century, you have gone from a few drops in your underwear to, oh God, I've got to go buy some Depends.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, it's capped at what, about 3% of the Canadian auto market a year?
It's pretty small, but it is nonetheless a rejection of the United States in favor of being more open to China. And Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, saying there's been reporting he's considering sending troops as part of the tripwire force to Greenland, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
look, we've talked about it before, but they just don't have the horses for this stuff, man. And I don't know how they're going to climb down. I mean, maybe he'll just like make up something else to draw attention and try and move the attention away from it. But it'll be interesting to see how U.S. stock markets deal with it tomorrow.
The one thing I will say on this is I think that all of this is making me feel optimistic. Ed referenced this a minute ago. Is making me feel optimistic about the forthcoming SCOTUS decision on the legality of Trump tariffs to date. One of the through lines you're seeing in administration communication about this is an attempt to tie the tariffs more firmly to national security, which is where the statutory power is ostensibly coming from. And the Greenland stuff it's horseshit, but it's got a firmer national security footing than many of the Trump tariffs had to date. That at least there you've got something that has an articulable military use case. And they have articulated it. Whereas if you go back to, the Trump Liberation Day or whatever it was, tariffs, the national security case was gestured at more than it was made.
I mean, like, they asked Bessent what the national emergency was, and he said the national emergency was avoiding a national emergency.
Yeah.
I think this is still pretty grim.
I don't think he's the guy you put out there to, argue that before SCOTUS.
No, but now we have it on paper.
Well, I mean, we have it on paper that our very tall boy has some things to say about the purpose of the tariffs, but that's not going to be the argument that they make in court. Like,
was it he who said that Trump would never make this Greenland thing about the Nobel Peace Prize, and then Trump immediately undermined him to the press
within 3 days, or no, the same day, I think.
Yeah, I think it was within like an hour.
It has now been 2 Januaries in a row where the United States security establishment has dropped some sort of massive flaming turd on Europe's doorstep. A year ago, it was the Munich Security Conference and J.D. Vance going over to basically say, you guys are all the worst and I hope you die. And that sparked...
He said it just like that, too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long speech. He got really mad that somebody in the UK got arrested for protesting outside an abortion clinic. It was that kind of unhinged J.D. Vance deal. And if you're a European policymaker and you are not radically altering your approach to the United States in terms of procurement of physical security assets, in terms of expected behavior in a conflict, in terms of, I don't know, whether you're comfortable with tens of thousands of Americans being stationed inside your borders, Germany, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like you are getting repeated signs that this is a really bad place to be. And I do think there's a good case to be made that this will be the nadir of the whole thing. Like he's gonna back down from Greenland and he's a dead letter and gonna get blown out in the midterms and that's it. But you are having to admit risks into your framework that didn't exist before, and they are existential. And I do not see a way that NATO continues from the European perspective in the way it has over the past 70 years. What year is it? And it's really mind-boggling to see so many European leaders. They've been much more aggressive over the past weekend, but it's so many European leaders have refused to believe that, like we can't rely on NATO anymore, at least in their public statements. To bring it back to the ICE conversation, they are trying to duck. And I think you could make a case for that in the first 6 months of this administration, but now I don't see it. Untangling yourself from NATO is a massive decade-plus project. It involves enormous expense. It involves enormous reallocation of resources inside your economy. It's not a small thing. But as an American, if you're a European government and you're not doing this, I have serious doubts about your whole deal, because you're getting given a lot of signals you cannot rely on us anymore, even though I wish that wasn't the case.
And the thing, it's not just Trump, it's Vance behind him too. There is not a clean pathway, even in your most optimistic scenarios, to any time before 2029 having an American executive that is in favor of the transatlantic relationship.
And there's no sign inside the American conservative movement that they're going to go back, right? So yeah, maybe then you get 8 years of a Democrat, but then a Republican comes in and you're right back where you were now.
Well, here's the thing that I can keep coming back to. 4 years from now, I think it is very likely we are having these same conversations with German names, right? Like, the right wing is a globally rising phenomenon, and like, absolutely they need to harden now because we're first up. But come 2030, I kind of suspect that the shoe is going to be on the other foot.
Not that way, though. It's not going to look the same, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. The EU is a big one. The other thing is, if you look at the far right's reaction to this in Europe, they're all pissed. Like, they're all like, "Oh, wait, sure. Like we didn't mean us," and
it discredits them.
That's the difference between a coalition that is built out of liberal internationalists and a coalition that is built out of right-wing nationalists, right?
Yeah.
Is that you can have a coalition built out of liberal internationalists and, it functions as a herd, they move as a group. Whereas if you build a coalition out of right-wing nationalists, they will fight.
Yep.
And that has happened every time people have tried to build a coalition out of right-wing nationalism.
Yep, massive collateral damage along the way, but it tears itself apart eventually. I will say, Ed, I really disagree with you there, and not because Europeans can't do anything wrong. They do all sorts of stupid things, but the fundamental strictures of the EU and the economic incentives it creates and the political systems that are running those countries, it's not going to look the same. I mean, I'm not saying that the far right can't be.
Of course, it's not going to look the same.
It's not going to look comparable in terms of seizing territory, for instance, or attempting to seize territory.
Sure, but okay, what economic incentives does Donald Trump have for this? These people are crazy motherfuckers, George.
Right, but you need to understand that our political system is unresponsive to public opinion 4 years at a time when it comes to the president.
Of course.
That's not how Germany works, man. Like, that's just straight up not how it works. So...
But you get AfD to a point where they can form a government. You're hoping that it doesn't fall. Or rather, you're hoping it does fall. Sorry.
Isn't that part of the problem, though, is that Germany is a proportional representation system. And AfD has pretty slim chance of getting
there is no way
a majority or even a governing coalition.
Correct.
Now, France might be a different story.
But even France, the lower house is a totally different ballgame. They are a presidential system, but it is a much different animal from the American system. I'm not saying nothing can go wrong in Europe.
Of course, I'm not saying that they have the ability. I'm not saying they have as long a lever as the United States does. But one of the things that I would wonder about as far as like NATO, or I don't think you're going to see NATO get buried in the Trump administration, at least as like an actual thing. There are other right-wing movements that are going to get power in that sphere. Maybe not as emphatically, not as big. How could they be as big? But like, the liberal international order is going to need to work together to get back out of this.
I agree with that.
And my intuition is we're probably going to be the ones who shit this out first.
Yeah, I agree with that. I just think the practical effects of an AfD government, which, as Lotax very correctly pointed out, would have to be a coalition government in Germany, is just it's not going to look the same as the Trump administration. And the other thing you need to realize too, I think, the
what could look the same as the Trump administration?
I mean, you were
the Farage government.
I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what looks like the German equivalent to the Trump administration, guys. Let's
different constitution, but yes, the feedback loops are different and they create different risks. I think the threat to individual citizens, the European project as a whole, the liberal international order we'll just continue using Germany as an example, from an AfD government in Germany are real and concrete, but they do not look like invading another NATO country or trying to seize anything by force. It's not going to work that way.
No, of course. I do not intend to suggest that, but they can be substantially destructive to other parts of the liberal international order as we are hopefully trying to put it back together.
Yeah, potentially.
Yes.
One of the problems with this, right, is that it's a system that some of the feedback mechanisms are going to be working against us in future years.
Mm-hmm.
If you see Europe pivot away from America for defense tech, for defense integration, then that's going to have ramifications for a future Democratic administration's positioning towards Europe defense integration. Because right now we have this thing where the money is aligned with the politics, where basically, being part of the greater American alliance means that you're buying American war products. It means that there is a lot of money flowing from you to American companies, and that's not necessarily the only determinant, but it's a significant pot sweetener, right? Like that makes it easier for Dems to do things like push for expansions of the military-industrial complex, for push for defense integration, because some of that is coming back to the United States in the form of cash money. Trump also has a theory of how that cash money should come back to the United States, and it's not. And it's underpants gnomes bullshit.
Or just to him.
He wants gold bars in a sack. Like that's functionally what we're looking at here. Hopefully, gold bars in a sack are not going to be a significant motivator for the next Democratic administration. I mean, I think there's no future that I'm excited about where we're not extremely anti-corruption.
As long as Bob Menendez isn't on the ticket, I think we're okay.
Yeah, we got a few legacy guys that we might have to deal with a little bit.
Still blows my mind that he couldn't get him to vote Republican.
I mean, God bless him.
Did he get pardoned?
No.
I know he was trying to flatter Trump into it, if I remember correctly. I'd never kept up with what actually transpired.
My understanding is that Trump said "fuck you" on the pardon, but that doesn't mean it's the last
word. God. Oh boy.
Anyway, here from the standpoint of January 2026, we've got a long way to go before the next potential administration change. Like, there's a long way to daylight, but it's probably good that we're talking about what it maybe is shaped like.
Yeah. Hey, maybe it'll happen before then. Maybe it'll happen next week.
All right. I am going to put my marker down. It happens this year.
Ooh.
I think he has gotten some news that says don't buy a calendar.
I mean, it would explain a lot of his behavior, honestly.
It would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thought he wanted to go to heaven. Guess not.
Yeah, the ballroom, Greenland.
Staring at it wistfully during meetings with oil and gas.
Yeah. Like, I mean, this has to be like a legacy thing, right? They're going to remember me forever, folks.
Yeah.
He was already in the history books. I don't know what else he wants.
I mean, if he should have just taken it as like he's the only man who ever posted his way to the presidency. And that would, if he had just stuck with that would have been an admirable trait.
Because the next poster is going to be a woman, and it's going to be AOC.
Look,
it's a long time till 2028, man.
Yeah, that one is not a real prediction. Don't at me.
All right, I wanted to close it out today with a quick reading from Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. It is MLK Day that we're recording this. And I think it's not a novel take, but this is the urtext of his output. And I think it's something that we should all take to heart. I'm going to read my favorite 2 paragraphs. There is a lot of good stuff in here, but I think it's words that are useful to take to heart as we navigate through a very broken and fallen world, and especially given the demographics of the 4 of us. I must make 2 honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom and justice is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from an obnoxious and negative peace in which the Negro passively accepted his unjust plight to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. Actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open, where it can be seen and dealt with, like a boil that can never be cured so long as it is covered up, but must be opened with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed with all the tension its exposure creates to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured.
I have a quote I would like to read as well regarding Dr. King. And that quote is from our good friend Elmo, who said, Elmo knows that it's important to be kind, just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., to which the John Birch Society responded, saying, he was a communist, Elmo.
Jesus Christ. For Normal Men in Charlotte, I'm George.
In D.C., I'm Proctor.
In Outer Florida, I'm low-tax speedrun enjoyer.
Stay normal, y'all.